After a long time of waiting for something new, we finally got something. A new tank, a new mechanic, and all of that is free. It is a new tag tree line on the Polish or European tag tree ending on the NC70 Błyskawica. I hope I pronounced that correctly. This tank does have a good amount of armor. It does have APCR standard rounds and also premium rounds, something I really like. It does have a playstyle that can be well suited for the front, and actually that is also where the mechanic is coming into play. Let's dive in and find out whether this tank is the right one for you. So just that we get the basics right. This tank has a 500 alpha damage. Yes, that isn't all that much. Also the DPM is not that great, but that depends on the distance towards the enemies. At a 120 to 200 meter distance you have a 500 alpha damage. If you get closer to the enemies, just to get to 120 or beneath the 120 and no less than 50 meters, then you have a 600 alpha damage. But if you get really close to the enemies, less than 50 meters, you suddenly have a 700 alpha damage with just 10 seconds of reload time, and that is absolutely amazing. Also, for the campers then, there is a punishment. Those people don't get the same alpha damage. If you are further away than 200 meters, then the alpha damage shrinks to just 400, which is pretty low, and also the DPM is not that high anymore. So this is a mechanic that just introduced, which I really endorse. I really love to have this one, and I hope that it gets to be on other tanks as well, because it encourages some really aggressive playstyle, or it encourages you to push forwards whenever it is possible at least, and you can be useful as a TD on top of that as well. Even though the TDs usually they suffer a little bit because of their lack of versatility due to not having a turret, due to not having the same amount of armor as some heavy tank, due to not having the same mobility, and also just being a low hit point tank that is not that good for frontlining. But with this mechanic you get to have some massive DPM and also some really nice damage output in terms of alpha damage that allows for some good trades. But before we're talking more about the playstyle, it is very important, if you get a new tank, to always look at the armor profile first. If we take a VK72 to look at it, because it has the same penetration as an E100, which is the most popular tank at tier 10, it makes sense to just use this tank or one of those to look at the NC70. We can see a very red tank. It does just show a lot of very well armored parts, just a bit of a lower plate of course that can get penetrated using AP and looking at a tank using enhanced armor. Turning that off and on, there is not much of a big difference here, and yet I would recommend going for enhanced armor. More about that in a second. Let's quickly turn this thing around here. If we are looking at the back, then it can also get HE'd. Even the cupola can get HE'd up there on a very slim part on the top, yet I have not been penetrated there yet. So I don't know how reliably that works. Also, I've not been able to penetrate it really. Yet it is worth keeping in mind. The gun mantlet can also get penetrated, yet that is quite tricky to aim for. So I would not recommend going for it. Rather go for heat and just penetrate the front. That's when you suddenly notice, okay, actually the armor might not be all that great, especially when the enemy is using calibrated shells. I don't know if you do, maybe let me know. If you are using calibrated shells, then this might be a very great target, especially if it is beneath you. That is changing a little bit based on the enhanced armor. Here there is quite a big difference, I would say, so I think it makes sense to go for it. As you are wriggling and angling, then you will have some more ricochets potentially that might be worth more than 70 hit points on top of that. And therefore also you will have to apply this tank a bit more passively at the start, which kind of is just counterintuitive with the mechanic that you are having. You want to apply this tank aggressively to be effective, but at the start you still have to somewhat be second row or need to be smart about your positioning, otherwise you do get penetrated. If you were able to always play hull down, then it would be absolutely fine. But the maximum gun depression is just 6 degrees, which is really not a huge amount. So you will often struggle to get that gun down and overpeak, exposing your lower plate or just exposing your sides as well to the campers in the back. Especially the TDs do have more penetration than the heavies, so if we take a gorilla with heat, that is just penetrating even more easily than a heavy like a E100 or so. So that is something I was not paying attention to at the start, and I was just being very confident in peeking out aggressively often. And then I noticed, oh wait, if there are TDs, they have more penetration than the heavies or the mediums, obviously, and they just butter through your front even. So position yourself wisely, move towards the center of the map potentially to crossfire the enemies so you can be a little bit closer to them. Generally, I'm quite happy with this tank's speed as well. It does have a decent mobility that feels pretty good. Just reverse speed, backward speed is horrible. Also, the traverse speed is just a pain. You often get circled very easily if you are just a bit too aggressive about your positioning. So keep in mind that you want some cover close by. You want to have some cover that you can hack so the enemy mediums cannot circle you and you cannot isolate yourself too much, because then you just cannot fight circling fast mediums. Also, you will need the enemies up to the front. Your sides are incredibly weak. Yeah, that is not good. But at least the mediums cannot penetrate your rear with HE, so that is quite good on that. Apart from that, you could look up all the statistics on Blitzkit if you wanted to, and I will leave that to you if you want to. Nothing really interesting to talk about that. Maybe you're still interested in the equipment loader that I'm going for. I choose to go for the rammer, also because it is APCR that doesn't benefit as much from calibrated shells as heat. As it is, heat is having a bigger, is being impacted more by calibrated shells than APCR. APCR is just 3%. That's not much of a difference. Also, the penetration is absolutely fine. And yet what I still want to say there about APCR as premium ammunition, this is allowing you to penetrate spaced armor and sides of enemies like the tracks, etc. as well. So I really love having that much more than heat as Pramo. And as just mentioned, also I do go for the enhanced armor. I also tried out the improved control for extra traverse speed. That was also doing fine. I don't know what is actually better there. You might just test either and do whatever feels better for you. Otherwise, this is my standard loadout. Camo net, of course, on TDs, even if I'm frontlining this tank a lot more often. Nothing fancy about the consumables either, so let's actually not talk about that anymore. I already did mention the playstyle quite a bit. You want to play this tank basically in a second row like a heavy tank almost. You can camp at the start in a more typical TD playstyle, yet of course you are highly ineffective as a TD compared to others. So if you have a chance for moving up, do so. Find some opportunities, maybe more like an autoloader, to move up close to the enemy's side so you can put out the 700 damage and have that massive over 4k DPM. More about that you will find out on the replay that I'm going to show you. I'm having 2 replays that I will analyze a little bit and comment on, and both of those are Masteries, pretty good games that you might learn something from and that does show you the game a little bit better. Alright, starting with the first game of 2. The second game is especially nice, and this one's on Alpenstadt. I'm playing in Platoon. This works very well with a TD like this one. I felt like on my solo games sometimes I felt a little bit too slow to really keep up, but still you can farm some nice damage, of course. Yet TDs generally are more team dependent than mediums or heavy tanks. So what I do here is I do first of all check the lineup. I see a lot of heavy tanks are there, only one medium on the other side. I'm not having to be too worried about a medium flank, so let's move up to some position where I can crossfire the enemies rather safely, and that is what I often do on this map. That is just going towards the center, and I have a first nice shot. Also pretty good damage. I'm moderately close towards the enemies. I want to be as close as possible, but at the same time I cannot get too aggressive yet because I definitely lack the hit points to do so. And also I have very vulnerable sides, let's keep that in mind. So I want to have some houses right next to me. I feel fine in this spot, but I do notice, okay, one medium is also spotted on the right side already. We can see him on the mini-map. Actually, on the C-cap there he is. So I can move up more aggressively without having to be too afraid of getting flanked from behind. Now that I have this information, I'm rather safe to go in. I am a little bit hesitant here because there might be some campers to the right side. That is a very popular TD position, yet so I don't want to peek into that, especially since the enemies have a 183 that I'm not fully aware of anymore. So I can just hold this corner and also farm down the enemies. Also, the enemies do have something in mind, and that is pushing onto me, going forwards. I do see that. Luckily, I did not overextend yet, as my teammate did, so I can just farm them. The A6 is also ammo-racked, so he is not going to have huge DPM, but the T57 and the 183 especially might be incredibly dangerous to me. So I'm calling for help, hoping for my platoon mate to move up and also for my teammates to clear base C, so we would be safe from the side. The 183 is coming. I try to side scrape a little bit. This also works quite well on the NC-17, and now I put in a big shot into 183, and in the best case I would have put a second one into him with that max throw of 875 at close range. I could have actually killed the 183 in just 2 shots. Yet I'm quite happy with what happened here because I did know, okay, the game is basically won, so I can just afford to move in, take some shot and put in some damage. And that is already in the first game. Basically, I also did just get a cap, gets me some extra XP, but didn't change anything about the outcome. Still 5.8k damage in a relatively short amount of time, just by moving up safely into some position where I could farm down the enemies. Of course, this is an ideal scenario, and this might not always look this way. You will see more about a less ideal scenario on the next game. This one is now played solo on Rockfield. This map does not really have a much better side over the other. I really don't necessarily care about where to go, just that I know, okay, most games are played on C, that is maybe slightly better, and I go for my standard position. You can see me turning around at the start because I see my teammates not really moving much, so I hope that they still move. I want to keep an eye on that, as currently I don't have a lot of backup, I don't have a lot of information. I'm checking the mini-map right now, seeing, okay, teammates are moving further to the other side. I can still hold quite well with this kind of tank that I'm playing, so I feel decently confident in getting towards this bush, putting out some shots and maybe falling back then and hoping for some campers from the right side to support me. I am unspotted. Let's use Premo, butter through the turret of the FE215B. That's a good first shot, not a huge amount of damage, but I am still in a position where my lower plate is kind of hidden and I can shoot down the enemies. I also do now see an IS-4 on the B-cap. That I imagine my teammates are taking care of. I don't necessarily need to go for him as well. That would be overkill because we would then all go for one tank in the middle and we would give up the map control. Much better if my teammates kill that one guy and I can still hold like 2-3 people to the front who are afraid to push me. Maybe sooner or later they are also going to go for me. That's pretty likely. But I know if I fall back towards the right side, then I will have my teammates with me. Talking about the right side, there is an IS-4 coming to my back, yet I also have a projector with me. I think maybe putting out one shot into the IS-4 will do the trick to just actually allow the projector to kill him. I did a bit of a mistake here. I just noticed as I'm looking back at it. I was shooting the IS-4 at a distance of 54 meters. If I just moved 4 meters further, I would have had 100 alpha damage more. That is definitely something you should keep in mind when playing this tank, because the difference is quite a lot. And if you do see that indicator to the right side as well, the 3 bars that show you how close you are, which kind of level of damage you deal. I can still afford to move up towards the mouse and put out a shot. I know that my teammates are all in my back. They will be coming, yet they are not there yet. So I'm also having to be careful and cannot overcommit. But I'm still pretty confident in being able to retreat whenever needed. And then I would drag the enemies into positions where they could get farmed by my teammates, especially if I fall back towards the B area, where I can fall back for a long time and have hull down positions basically, so enemies would really have to commit and then be in the open for my teammates. I'm pretty close to the T95, so just a big shot into his cupola. That's pretty nice. I can still work this corner a little bit. I can try this again, even if I trade with him. At this point, I think, okay, you know what, let's go for it. And it's a max roll. I just killed an enemy in just 2 shots. This is something that not many tanks can do, especially not with that kind of reload time. Highly effective damage output. Also the FV215B got tracked. There are just 2 opponents apart from the FV to the front. That's the mouse who just pushed into his demise, and the CC coming to the right side that I was also not that worried about anymore. And I can just move in, face hug and ram a little bit, getting me to 7.1k damage. Very nice game. On this one, it's actually my best damage on this tank yet. And you could see that I was feeling confident in holding, but always having in mind that I maybe had to push back or to fall back at some point. And you can also block a lot of damage, but don't trust on being able to do so if you are moving too far into the open. If you are on open terrain, you can side scrape a little bit, you can play hull down. Hull down is definitely better than side scrape, but with a 6 degrees of gun depression you often struggle to do so. If you wriggle around a lot, you are likely to get some ricochets as well, especially if you have some little obstacles, some little stuff to hide your lower plate a little bit, making it harder for the enemies to see you. And yet, maybe let's move on to a quick resume about this tank. What is my actual opinion about it? You can also let me know what you think, by the way. I'm eager to know that. Please do let me know in the comments. I personally think that this is a tank that can compete with a lot of very aggressive TDs out there, like the Badger, like the XM66F, also the VZ, WZ, GFT TD. All of those are great tanks. And this one does have some different quirks that are to the better and the worse. Actually, you have this mechanic that allows you to have massive damage output at close range and really weak damage output at longer range. I love having this because a lot of people think of TDs being like tower defense tanks. That's not the playstyle that they should be going for. This tank, this mechanic allows you to get more aggressive and actually be useful in pushes. And that requires you, of course, to make use of the information at hand. That is not always easy, but if you have the skill set for that, if you want to learn that skill set, then you are being rewarded a lot. And that is something I really like here on this one. So it is a very interesting play, even though sometimes it can be frustrating. Mostly you have a really nice time whenever you get to have some enemy up close, and then it's just so much fun. So I really love that, and I'm definitely going to play this quite a lot more. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you need more help on how to play different kinds of maps, I got some videos on that. I got some other guides coming up as well about different tank classes, including the TDs. Thanks for watching. This is Nino. Goodbye.